So in our first video for Chapter 6, we're going to look at some review, converting between fractions, decimals, and percents. And a lot of times we call this FDP, fractions, decimals, and percents. Hopefully you've seen this all before, but we're going to review it here. And it does go with 6.1 and 6.2, which we usually combine. So you have a paper just like this. I'll give you a second to kind of write this in, fill it out, and catch up, and then we'll do some examples together. So this first one is changing or converting a percent to a decimal. And as you're writing, just remember percent, the word percent means out of 100. So when we have a percent, it's over 100, right? We could think of that as 100 in the denominator. So in order to convert, we're going to divide by 100. And you can go ahead and do that. Or the shortcut is just move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Anytime you divide by 100, you're taking that decimal point and moving it 2 places to the left. So if we look at our examples, even if there's no decimal point in the answer, we know it's here at the end. So if I move it 2 places to the left, 0.37 would be the decimal for 37%. Careful, if it's here like this and I move it 2 places to the left, I have to plug a 0 placeholder in there. 0.09 would be 9%. And again, 2 places to the left, it might end up still in the middle of my number. 1.2 is my decimal for 120%. So it's always 2 places. If you're dividing by 100, you move it 2 places to the left. Pause at any time if you need to catch up or if you're still writing when I go on to the next one. I want you to go at your own pace. Okay, what if I want to take a decimal into a percent? So kind of going backwards from what we just did. Well, now I'm going to move my decimal point 2 places to the right. And then put a percent sign on my answer. So if they give me the decimal 0.74, I'm going to move it 2 places to the right and get 74 and put a percent sign on it. If they give me the number 2.8, I'm going to move it 2 places to the right, 280, right? Put a 0 in for that placeholder if you need to, and put a percent sign on it. If they give me 0.05, move it over 5%. Okay? Finish writing any of this if you need to. Hit play when you're ready to go on. Okay, my next one, converting fractions to decimals. So anytime they give you a fraction like this, we know that this bar means to divide. So go ahead and write down that we just have to divide. And our 2 methods for dividing, put it in your calculator, right? Or we all know how to do long division. I would not be surprised if you have to do long division on M-step. Anytime you see a decimal, you can set this up as long division, and we're going to do this one as an example. Okay, so if you forget, numerator on top, the top number, divided by the denominator. So you would type it in this way, numerator divided by denominator, or if you're setting it up, numerator divided by denominator this way for long division. So let's do long division. 5 divided by 8, in case you forgot. 5 divided by 8 would look like that. 8 doesn't fit into 5, so I'm going to go ahead and put a 0, a decimal point and a 0. And that decimal point goes lined up in my answer right above. So now 8 into 50. Well, 8 can go into 50. 6 times 8 is 48. Bring down my remainder, well, subtract, and I get a remainder of 2. If you have a remainder, keep going. Now 20. 8 goes into 20 twice. That is 16. Remainder of 4. Bring down another 0. And 8 goes into 40 5 times, which is 40. No more remainder. So I can stop there, and I get the decimal 0.625. So long division is always an option if you're trying to turn a fraction into a decimal. Okay. Decimal to fraction. Decimal to fraction. Let's go ahead and take a second to write this down. Go ahead and write the directions first. You're going to use the place value of the decimal to determine the denominator, right? We're turning it into a fraction, so we got to figure out what number is going to go in that denominator spot. So use the place value to determine what the denominator should be, and then make sure we simplify our answer. Okay, so I have a little diagram here. If I had a decimal, right, here's my decimal point, and I just have 3 different place values. Remember, this one is called tenths, so that means it's out of 10. This next place value is called hundredths, so this is out of 100. And this next one is the thousandths place value, so that would be out of 1,000. So if I have a number that ends here, I'm going to take whatever my decimal is over 10. If I have a number with 2 place values after the decimal, I'm going to take whatever that number is over 100. And if it has 3 place values after the decimal, I'm going to take that number over 1,000. So let's look at these examples. Okay, because this goes to the second spot, the hundredth spot, this would be 76 over 100. And then I need to simplify. So I do have to simplify every fraction I get. It looks like this one could probably be divided by 4. So I'm just going to check that in my calculator. And if I divide 76 divided by 4, I get 19. And 100 divided by 4, I get 25. So there's my simplified fraction. Okay, how about 5.9? Well, I know my whole number is going to be 5. And then this is in the tenths spot. It's in the first place value, so over 10. So this is 5 and 9 tenths. And that's already simplified. That's my fraction. How about 16 thousandths? This goes to the third place value, so 16 over 1,000. And then I need to simplify that. Looks like I could divide by 4. 8. Let's try divided by 8. So I'm going to type it into my calculator, and 16 divided by 8 is 2, and 1,000 divided by 8 is 125. And there's my simplified fraction. Okay? So that's decimals to fractions. How about percents to fractions? Again, percent, the word percent means out of 100. So I'm going to take that percent and put it out of 100 or over 100 and then simplify that fraction. Okay, so if you have those steps written down, let's look at our examples. 25% means 25 over 100. And then if I simplify, I can divide by 25 and I get 1/4. There's my fraction. This next one, 5.5% means 5.5 over 100. So I included this one because I wanted to show you a strategy. If you have a decimal inside your fraction like this, we want to get rid of this decimal. We don't want a decimal inside of a fraction for it to be simplified. So there's a cool trick. If I double this one and double this one, that would get rid of that 0.5, that half there. So then I would have 11 over 200, and that's actually the simplified way of writing that fraction. And then 40%, 40 over 100. Okay, here's one where I could divide by 10, get rid of those zeros. And now I see 4 over 10, and I can simplify that further. Divide by 2, and I get this. So there is some simplifying involved with all of these. If you're looking for a fraction answer, make sure it's simplified. Okay, I flipped it over. Now we're on our last one, fraction to percent. Divide to get a decimal. Okay, if I'm starting with a fraction, fractions tell me to divide. And again, I could use the calculator or long division, but divide to get that decimal, and then convert your decimal to a percent. Right, and the shortcut for that, you could flip your paper over and look, or the shortcut for that is to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Okay? So divide, calculator or long division, and then move the decimal place back over to turn it into a percent. So here we go. I'm just going to do it on my calculator. If I did 7 divided by 9 on my calculator, I get this. And to turn that into a percent, move it 2 places to the right. 77.7%, and put a percent sign on it. Okay, 5 divided by 2 is 2.5 on my calculator. Turn that into a percent, move it over 2 places, 250 with a percent sign. Okay? So you have a chart here that is, you're going to see some more of this in your practice, but just converting back and forth between fractions, decimals, and percents. I want to skip over that for now. We'll come back to it if we have time, but I want to get to where we're comparing and putting numbers in order. So in these sections, 6.1 and 6.2, you're going to find any kind of directions that say compare them, put them in order, which is greater, least to greatest. Okay? So I would suggest turn them all into decimals. If I get them all into decimals, it'll be easier to compare. Okay? So 17 over 20, well, I'm just going to type in 17 divided by 20 in my calculator. And I did that, and I got 0.85. And it says, oh, and I have to turn 80% into a decimal, 0.8, right? Using the directions for what we just went over on the rest of this video. And then pick which one is larger. Well, 0.85 is larger, so that's 17 over 20. Which one is greater here? Turn them both into decimals. 0.25, or when I type in 7 divided by 25, I get 0.28. Well, 0.28 is a bigger decimal, so that's larger. You try these two. You're going to have to turn your percents into decimals and then compare the two decimals. Or if you had a fraction, turn those into decimals so that you can compare. So try the next two and then we'll check. So as long as you're converting correctly and you get 2 decimals, you should be able to pick which one is bigger. Okay. Another type of question you're going to see, which of the following is not a correct way, another way of expressing if you got 12 out of 20 on a quiz. So basically this is asking you, can you turn it into a fraction, a decimal, or a percent and tell if it's still equivalent? Okay, well, 12 out of 20 could look like this. Yes, that's a correct way of doing it. If I simplify that, 6 over 10, that's another correct way of expressing 12 out of 20. Is that the same as 3/4? No. Right? I can't, if I simplify this, I would get 3/5, not 3/4. So that is not correct. This is not another way of expressing it. If I divided 6/10, yes, it would be that. If I move that over 2 places, it would be 60%. Yes, that's correct. Well, how about 0.6 and the percent sign? No. I wrote it as a decimal, but I put a percent sign on it. That is not correct. 0.60. Yeah. If I put 0.6 and then a 0 here, that's still equivalent. It doesn't change the value. That would be right. How about 0.06? No, that's not the same. Okay, so you need to be able to look at any different fraction, decimal, or percent and any way of writing those and decide if it's correct or not. All right, last ones, and I'm going to let you pause and try these. I want you to turn everything into a decimal. Get a decimal, get a decimal, get a decimal, and then put them in order, the decimals in order from least to greatest. Same thing here. Get a decimal, get a decimal here, and then put your decimals in order from least to greatest. Hit play when you're ready to check. You should have 5 numbers in order here, 4 numbers in order here. Okay, here's my decimals, and then I wrote them in order, increasing. Here's my decimals, and careful, these are negative, so I start with the biggest negative, and then I'm going up towards 0 to put them in order.